Captain Lee Hyun walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council building. The doors were so tall that 50 humans could stand on each other's shoulders and still not reach the top. Everything here was built for beings much larger than humans. Hyun felt very small as he entered the main chamber. The chamber was enormous. Thousands of alien beings sat in curved rows that went up and up like a giant bowl. Some aliens looked like giant insects with shiny wings. Others looked like walking trees with many arms. Some were made of what appeared to be living metal. A few were just floating balls of light that changed colors when they spoke. Hyun had never seen so many different types of life in one place. As Earth's first representative to the Galactic Council, he was still getting used to all the strange sights and sounds. The air smelled like flowers mixed with machine oil. Strange music played softly in the background. Dr. Park Soo walked beside Hyun. She was Earth's best engineer and Hyun's closest friend. She carried a small device that translated the alien languages into Korean. Without it, Hyun would not understand. Anything being said? This is bigger than I expected, Park Soo whispered to Hyun. Much bigger, Hyun agreed. He looked around at all the alien faces staring at him. Most of them looked curious. Some looked unfriendly. A few seemed to ignore him completely. Ambassador Kim Da-yoon was already waiting for them at the human section. She had been on this planet for 3 months, learning about galactic politics. She did not look happy to see them. You should not have come, Kim Da-eun said quietly. This meeting is about war, real war, not the small conflicts humans know about. Earth sent us to help, Hyun replied. We want to do our part. Kim Da-eun shook her head. Humans cannot help with this. This is beyond anything we understand. Before Hyun could answer, a loud sound filled the chamber. All the aliens became quiet. A tall being walked to the center of the room. It looked like a giant insect, but it stood on 2 legs like a human. Its wings were clear like glass and made beautiful patterns when light passed through them. I am Kol Thara, leader of the Zenthari Council, the being said. Its voice was translated into Korean through Hyun's device. We gather here today because our galaxy faces its darkest hour. Kol Thara spread its wings wide. Images appeared in the air above the chamber. The images showed space battles. Ships exploded in bright flashes. Planets burned. Entire star systems went dark. The Vorthak Empire has conquered 70% of our galaxy, Kol Thara continued. They move from system to system, destroying everything in their path. Their technology is beyond our understanding. Their weapons can destroy matter itself. Their ships can move through solid objects like they are not there. The images changed to show the Vorthak themselves. They looked like walking crystals, but they moved like living things. Their bodies were transparent and filled with swirling energy. They did not use vehicles or wear clothes. They seemed to be made of pure power. We have tried everything, said another voice. A huge reptilian creature stood up in one of the high seats. This was General Moxtar, commander of the Allied forces. His voice was deep and rough like grinding stones. Our best weapons cannot hurt them. Our strongest shields cannot stop them. Our fastest ships cannot escape them. More aliens began to speak. Each one told the same story. The Drakmori had created biological weapons that could eat through any material, but the Vorthak were not made of normal matter. The Mechanicus Collective had built artificial intelligences smarter than any living mind. But even these supercomputers could not find a way to defeat the Vorthak. They adapt to everything we try, explained a floating ball of blue light. This was Veltara, a Zenthari scientist. When we use energy weapons, they learn to absorb energy. When we use physical weapons, they become immaterial. When we try new tactics, they predict our moves before we make them. Hyun listened to story after story of defeat. Entire fleets destroyed in minutes. Planets with billions of people turned to dust. Civilizations that had existed for millions of years wiped out in days. Our forces are retreating to the outer rim, General Moxtar said. This is our final stronghold. If we cannot find a solution soon, we will have to evacuate to other galaxies. We will abandon our homes forever. The chamber became very quiet. The weight of those words settled on everyone present. These beings were talking about running away from their entire galaxy. They were giving up everything they had ever known. Kolthara looked around the chamber. Does anyone have new ideas? Has anyone found something we have not tried? One by one, representatives from different species stood up. Each one admitted they had nothing new to offer. The quantum engineers had run out of ideas. The time manipulators could not find a moment when the Vorthak were vulnerable. The reality shapers could not change the basic laws of physics enough to matter. Finally, Kolthara's eyes fell on the small human section. What about Earth? What can humanity contribute to this war? The chamber filled with noise as aliens talked, among themselves. Some laughed. Others made sounds that the translator could not convert into words. Yun could tell that most of them thought humans were a joke. Humans have barely left their own planet, said a voice from high up in the chamber. They still use chemical rockets. Their weapons throw pieces of metal. They have not even learned to manipulate matter at the atomic level. Their civilization is less than 100 years old in space, added another voice. What could they possibly know that we do not? Kim Da-yoon looked embarrassed. She had been trying to make humans seem important, but this meeting made it clear how primitive Earth really was compared to the rest of the galaxy. Yun stood up slowly. All eyes in the chamber turned to him. He was probably the smallest being in the room, but he felt the weight of their attention. His heart beat fast, but he kept his voice steady. I would like to speak with Earth before giving an answer, Hyun said. Give me 48 hours. Let me talk to my people. Maybe we can think of something you have not considered. General Moxtar made a sound like angry thunder. We do not have time for games, human. Our enemies advance every hour. Our defenses crumble every day. 48 hours will not change anything, said Veltara. If beings with millions of years of advanced knowledge cannot solve this problem, how can a species that discovered fire yesterday help us? But Kolthara raised one wing for silence. The human asks for little time. We can spare 48 hours. Perhaps fresh eyes will see something we have missed. The Zenthari leader looked directly at Hyun. But understand this, human. If you have no solution after 2 days, we begin the evacuation. The galaxy will be abandoned to the Vorthak. Hyun nodded. I understand. As the council meeting ended, aliens filed out of the chamber in small groups. Most of them ignored Hyun completely. A few gave him looks that seemed to say he was wasting everyone's time, but some looked curious, as if they wondered what a primitive species might think of that advanced civilizations had not. Dr. Park Soo walked beside Hyun as they left the building. Do you really think we can help? She asked. I do not know, Hyun admitted. But I think we have to try. These people are giving up their entire galaxy. If there is even the smallest chance we can help, we must take it. Ambassador Kim Da-yoon caught up with them outside. You have made a mistake, she said. Now the whole galaxy will watch us fail. This will destroy any respect humans might have earned. Maybe, Hyun said, or maybe being different from everyone else is exactly what this situation needs. That night, Hyun could not sleep. He stood at the window of his temporary quarters, looking up at the alien stars. Somewhere out there, the Vorthak Empire was moving closer, and somehow, in just 2 days, he had to find something that the greatest minds in the galaxy had missed. The next morning, Captain Lee Hyun stood in the communication room of the human ship Soul's Pride. The ship was small compared to the alien vessels in the spaceport, but it was the most advanced ship Earth had ever built. Dr. Park Soo worked at the quantum communication device, adjusting settings to reach Earth across the vast distance of space. Connection established, Park Soo announced. The large screen in front of them flickered, and then showed a meeting room on Earth. Director Han Ji-woo sat at a long table with several other people. Behind them, Hyun could see the lights of Seoul through tall windows. Captain Hyun, Director, Han said. We received your report about the Galactic Council meeting. The situation sounds very bad. It is worse than bad, Hyun replied. The Vorthak Empire has destroyed most of the galaxy. These alien civilizations have technology we cannot even imagine, but they cannot stop the enemy. They are planning to abandon the entire galaxy. Professor Choi Min-ho leaned forward. He was Earth's best strategic analyst, the person who studied how wars were won and lost. Tell us everything you learned about the Vorthak. Every detail might be important. Hyun spent an hour describing what he had seen and heard. The Vorthak could turn their bodies from solid to energy and back again. Their weapons could unmake the bonds that held atoms together. Their ships could pass through solid matter like ghosts. They seemed to have no weaknesses that anyone could find. Most importantly, Hyun said, they adapt to every attack very quickly. If you use an energy weapon against them once, they become immune to energy weapons. If you try a surprise attack, they predict your next surprise. It is like fighting an enemy that learns faster than you can think. Director Han looked troubled. What do the aliens expect from us? They do not expect anything, Hyun admitted. Most of them think humans are too primitive to help. They only gave me 48 hours, because they feel sorry for us. Dr. Park Soo had been listening quietly, but now she spoke up. Maybe being primitive is not a weakness. Maybe it is exactly what we need. Everyone looked at her. She moved to a different screen and began showing data that Earth had collected about the Galactic War. For 6 months, we have been watching this war through our deep space sensors, Park Soo explained. We recorded every battle we could detect. I have been studying the patterns. The screen showed battle after battle. Each one looked the same. The Allied forces would attack with incredible weapons that could destroy planets. The Vorthak would adapt and counterattack. The Allied forces would try new tactics. The Vorthak would adapt again. Every single battle ended the same way. Look at this, Park Soo said. She highlighted certain parts of the battles. The Vorthak are not just adapting randomly. They are analyzing the technology they face. Their minds work like supercomputers. They see a weapon and immediately understand how it works, what its weaknesses are, and how to defend against it. Professor Choi nodded slowly. So their greatest strength is their ability to analyze and adapt to advanced technology. Exactly, Park Soo said. But what if we use technology so simple that there was nothing to analyze? The room became quiet as everyone thought about this idea. Director Han frowned. You mean use primitive weapons against the most advanced enemy in the galaxy? Why not? Park Soo asked. Every species in this war has tried to fight the Vorthak with more and more complex weapons. Quantum disruptors, reality manipulators, time distortion fields. But what if the answer is simpler than that? She brought up another screen showing human weapons, guns that fired bullets, cannons that shot metal balls, rockets that carried explosive warheads. These weapons work by basic physics, Park Soo continued. A piece of metal moving very fast hits something and breaks it. There is no complex technology to analyze, no exotic energy patterns to understand, just mass times velocity equals force. Engineer Nam Bo-young, who had been working at another station, looked up. The Vorthak might not even recognize these as weapons. Their sensors probably look for energy signatures in complex systems. A simple projectile might be invisible to them. Tactical Officer Yoon Jae joined the conversation. We know they can become immaterial to avoid energy weapons. But can they become immaterial while still being able to fight? If they turn into pure energy, they might not be able to affect physical objects either. Communications specialist Kang So-ra had been monitoring alien transmissions. I have been listening to Vorthak battle communications. Their language is mathematical. They describe everything in terms of energy equations and probability matrices. I do not think they have words for simple physical impact. Director Han looked skeptical. This sounds very risky. You want to fight an enemy that has conquered most of the galaxy by throwing rocks at them? Not rocks, Hyun said, understanding the plan. But the basic idea is the same. We use weapons so simple that their advanced minds cannot understand them. Professor Choi was studying battle data on his own screen. This could work, he said. Slowly. Look at their adaptation patterns. Every time they encounter a new weapon, they spend processing power analyzing it. But if there is nothing to analyze, they might not adapt at all, Park Soo finished. Or by the time they figure out how to defend against simple physics, we could have already won. Director Han was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, What exactly are you proposing? Hyun looked at his crew. We modify our ship to carry kinetic weapons. No lasers, no plasma cannons, no exotic matter. Just metal projectiles moving at high speed. We convince the alien alliance to try the most primitive attack in galactic history. The aliens will think we are crazy, Nam Bo-young said. They already think we are primitive, Yoon Jae replied. At least this way, Being primitive becomes useful. Kang Sora was still monitoring communications. Captain, I am detecting increased Vorthak activity. They are moving toward the outer rim faster than expected. The aliens might not have as much time as they thought. Director Han made his decision. Do it. Modify your ship for kinetic warfare. We will send you everything we can through quantum communication. Technical specifications, ammunition designs, targeting systems. If this works, it will be the strangest victory in human history. And if it does not work? Yun asked. Then at least we tried something different, Director Han replied. Better to fail doing something new than to fail doing the same thing everyone else has already tried. The communication ended, and Hyun turned to his crew. They had less than 40 hours to prepare for what might be the most important battle. In galactic history, Dr. Park Soo was already working at her engineering station. I can modify our weapons systems in 12 hours. We remove all the energy components and install mechanical launchers. Simple, basic, primitive. What will we use for ammunition? Nam Bo-young asked. Tungsten rods, Park Soo replied. Dense metal, shaped for maximum penetration. No explosives, no guidance systems, no complex materials. Just heavy metal moving very fast. Yoon Jae was calculating trajectories. Without guided missiles, we will have to aim manually. No computer targeting, no predictive algorithms. Just eyeballing it like ancient human warriors. That might be perfect, Hyun said. If their minds work like computers, they might not be able to predict human intuition and guesswork. Kang So-ra looked up from her station. Captain, I am receiving a message from the Galactic Council. They want to know if we have made any progress. Tell them we are working on something, Hyun replied. Tell them we will have an answer soon. As his crew worked through the night, Hyun wondered if they were about to save the galaxy or make the biggest fools of themselves in galactic history. The plan seemed too simple, too basic, but maybe that was exactly why it might work. Every advanced civilization in the galaxy had tried to outtink the Vorthak with more complex technology. Maybe it was time to try outthinking them with less complex technology. By morning, the Soul's Pride had been transformed from a diplomatic vessel into something that looked like it belonged in a museum of ancient warfare. The elegant energy weapons were gone, replaced by crude metal launchers. The sophisticated targeting computers were disconnected, replaced by simple optical sights. It looks ridiculous, Nam Bo-young said, looking at their modified ship. Good, Hyun replied. If it looks ridiculous to us, imagine how it will look to beings who think in terms of quantum mechanics and dimensional manipulation. Dr. Park Soo ran final tests on their new weapons. Everything is ready, Captain. We have turned the most advanced human ship into the most primitive warship in the galaxy. Perfect, Hyun said. Now we just have to convince the aliens to let us try it. As they prepared to return to the Galactic Council, Hyun felt a strange confidence. They were about to propose the most basic form of warfare to the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. It was either brilliant or completely insane. Maybe, Hyun thought, those were the same thing. Captain Lee Hyun walked back into the Galactic Council chamber exactly 48 hours after he had left. This time, the enormous room was even more crowded. News of the human proposal had spread throughout the allied species, and everyone wanted to hear what the primitive newcomers had to say. The atmosphere was different now, more desperate. During the 2 days Hyun had been preparing, the Vorthak Empire had destroyed 3 more star systems. Millions of refugees floated in space, having fled their destroyed homes. The enemy was moving faster than anyone had expected. Dr. Park Soo followed behind Hyun, carrying a simple metal rod. It was one of their new ammunition pieces, just tungsten, shaped into a pointed cylinder. Nothing special about it at all. No energy signature, no complex materials, no advanced technology. It looked like something a primitive species might throw as a spear. Ambassador Kim Da-eun was waiting for them, and she looked even more worried than before. "Please tell me you have a real plan," she whispered. "The situation has gotten worse. If you embarrass Earth now, we might never recover our reputation." "Trust us," Hyun replied quietly. Kolthara called the session to order. The massive Xanthari's wings spread wide, and the chamber became silent. "Captain Hyun of Earth has requested this time to present a solution to our crisis," The floor is yours, human. Hyun walked to the center of the chamber. Looking up at thousands of alien faces, he felt very small. These beings represented civilizations millions of years old. They had technology that could reshape reality itself. And he was about to suggest they fight their war with rocks and sticks. Fellow members of the council, Hyun began, I have studied your war against the Vorthak Empire. I have analyzed their tactics, their technology, and their victories. And I believe I know why you cannot defeat them. General Moxtar made a rumbling sound of annoyance. Speak quickly, human. We do not have time for long speeches. You cannot defeat them because you are trying to outthink beings whose minds work like perfect computers. Hyun continued. Every weapon you create, they analyze and counter. Every strategy you develop, they predict and defeat. You are fighting a war of complexity against an enemy that wins by being more complex than you. A voice called out from high in the chamber. This is nothing new, human. We know the Vorthak adapt to our weapons. That is why we asked for new ideas, not obvious observations. Hyun held up the tungsten rod that Dr. Park Soo had given him. This is my solution. The chamber erupted in noise. Aliens talked, laughed, and made sounds the translators could not convert. Some species had never seen such a primitive object. Others remembered similar weapons from their own ancient histories. You want us to fight with sticks? General Moxtar roared. This is insulting! Not sticks, Hyun said calmly. Kinetic projectiles. Dense metal moving at high velocity. The simplest weapon in the universe. Veltara, the Xanthari scientist, floated down closer to examine the rod. This has no energy signature, no complex materials, no advanced systems. It is just metal. Exactly, Hyun said. The Vorthak defeat you by analyzing your weapons and developing counters. But what if we used weapons so simple that there was nothing to analyze? The chamber became quieter as some aliens began to consider the idea. Dr. Yoon Hai-ri, the council's xenopsychologist, spoke up. The human makes an interesting point about Vorthak psychology. Their minds are built for pattern recognition and technological analysis. They see energy weapons and immediately understand how to counter them. But a simple projectile has no pattern to recognize, Dr. Park Soo added, stepping forward. No technology to analyze, no complex systems to understand. It is just physics. Mass times velocity equals impact force. A new voice joined the conversation. It belonged to Admiral Zekmor of the Drakmori fleet. Even if this worked once, they would adapt. They always adapt. How do you adapt to being hit by a rock? Hyun asked. You can become immaterial, but then you cannot attack either. You can strengthen your hulls, but metal moving fast enough will penetrate any material. You can try to dodge, but at close range, simple projectiles are very hard to avoid. Lieutenant Oh Dong-hyun, who had been standing quietly behind Hyun, stepped forward. We have modified human fighter craft to carry these weapons. No energy signatures for their sensors to detect. No complex targeting systems for them to jam. Just manual aiming and basic physics. Captain Bae Soo-jin added, Our support vessels carry thousands of tungsten rods. No exotic materials, no advanced manufacturing, just dense metal shaped for penetration. General Moxtar was growing more frustrated. This is madness! You want us to abandon millions of years of technological advancement to fight like primitives? Yes, Hyun said simply, because being primitive is the one thing the Vorthak cannot counter. The chamber divided into groups of arguing aliens. Some species thought the idea was brilliant. Others thought it was insane. Most were simply confused by the concept of using such basic weapons. Dr. Yoon Hai-ri requested permission to speak. As the expert on alien psychology, her opinion carried weight. I have studied Vorthak mental patterns from captured communications. Their consciousness operates on predictive algorithms. They see technology and immediately calculate its potential, weaknesses, and counters. She gestured toward the tungsten rod. But this weapon requires no prediction. It follows simple ballistic trajectories that any species with spaceflight can calculate. The Vorthak mind, which is designed to analyze complex systems, might actually struggle with something so basic. Like a supercomputer trying to solve the problem of how to hit something with a thrown rock, Park Soo added. Admiral Zekmor was still skeptical. Even if we accept this theory, how do we implement it? Our ships are not designed for kinetic warfare. Our crews have never trained with primitive weapons. We teach them, Hyun said. Kinetic weapons are easy to understand. Point at target. Fire projectile. Hope for hit. No complex calculations required. Hope for hit? General Mokhtar's voice rose to a roar. You want us to base our final battle on hope? Better than basing it on technology that has already failed, Hyun replied calmly. A small voice spoke from one of the middle sections. It belonged to Engineer Takleth of the Mechanicus Collective. Our artificial intelligences have run probability calculations on this proposal. The mathematical models are interesting. All attention turned to the small robot-like being. The Mechanicus Collective built the smartest artificial minds in the galaxy. If their computers had opinions about the plan, everyone wanted to hear them. The calculations show that kinetic weapons should be ineffective against Vorthak technology, Takleth continued. However, the same calculations show that all our current weapons should also be ineffective, and yet we know the Vorthak can be harmed because they take defensive actions. What does that mean? Kolthara asked. It means our models do not fully understand Vorthak capabilities, Takleth admitted. But the models also cannot predict how Vorthak minds will respond to weapons that have no technological complexity to analyze. The human proposal exists outside our mathematical frameworks. Veltara was still studying the tungsten rod. I am running sensor scans on this object. My equipment, which can analyze matter down to the quantum level, reports that this is simply dense metal, nothing more. My sensors cannot even classify it as a weapon because it has no weapon-like properties. If your advanced sensors cannot recognize it as a weapon, Hyun said, maybe Vorthak sensors will have the same problem. The debate continued for hours. Some species supported the idea because they had no better options. Others opposed it because it seemed too simple to work. Many were simply confused by the concept of intentionally using inferior technology. Finally, Kolthara called for order. We have heard the human proposal. Now we must decide. Do we attempt this kinetic warfare strategy, or do we proceed with evacuation? I vote for evacuation, General Mokhtar said immediately. This plan is too risky. If it fails, we lose our remaining forces for nothing. I vote to try the human plan, said Dr. Yoon-Hae Ri. The Vorthak are already winning. We have nothing left to lose by trying something completely different. The vote was close. Many species abstained, unwilling to commit to either option, but slowly a majority emerged in favor of giving the kinetic warfare plan one chance. Very well, Kolthara announced. We will attempt Captain Hyun's strategy. But understand this. If the plan fails, we will immediately begin evacuation procedures. This is our final attempt to save our galaxy. Hyun felt a mixture of relief and terror. They had convinced the council to try their plan, but now they had to actually make it work. The fate of the galaxy rested on their ability to fight the most advanced enemy in the universe with the most primitive weapons available. As the session ended, aliens gathered in small groups to discuss what had just happened. Some looked excited by the possibility of a new approach. Others looked worried about trusting their fate to such simple technology. Captain Bae Sujin approached Hyun. Captain, several alien ship commanders want to meet with us. They want to learn how to modify their vessels for kinetic warfare. Good, Hyun replied. The more ships we can convert, the better our chances. 3 days later, Captain Lee Hyun stood on the bridge of the Soul's Pride as it moved through space toward the edge of the Kepler Nebula. Behind his ship, the strangest fleet in galactic history followed. Advanced alien vessels that could bend. Space and time had been hastily modified to carry simple metal projectiles. Weapons that could unmake matter had been replaced with mechanical launchers that worked like giant slingshots. The enemy was waiting for them at the nebula's edge. The Vorthak fleet looked like a collection of floating crystals, each one the size of a city. Their ships pulsed with internal energy, changing from solid to transparent and back again. Even at this distance, Hyun could feel the power radiating from the enemy vessels. Vorthak fleet detected, announced communications specialist Kang So-ra. 67 capital ships, approximately 300 smaller vessels. They are maintaining standard formation. Dr. Park Soo worked at her engineering station, making final checks on their modified weapons systems. All kinetic launchers ready, Captain. We have 500 tungsten rods loaded and another 1,000 in reserve. The difference between the A2 fleets was shocking. The alien alliance ships looked magnificent with their energy shields glowing and exotic weapons charging. The Vorthak vessels seemed to be made of living light and crystal, but scattered throughout the formation were the modified ships carrying kinetic weapons, and these looked almost pathetic by comparison. Pilot Moon Tae-yang was in one of the human fighters, leading a squadron of small craft that had been stripped of all advanced technology. His fighter looked like something from Earth's early space age compared to the sleek alien vessels around him. All fighters report ready. Moon Tae-yang's voice came through the communication system. Manual targeting systems operational. It feels strange flying without computer assistance. Gunner Shin Hyo-jin was at the main weapons control station. Instead of complex energy weapon controls, she had simple mechanical triggers and basic targeting scopes. Kinetic weapons ready for manual fire. Target acquisition will be visual only. Engineer Lee Sang-woo monitored systems so basic that most alien ships did not even have sensors to detect them. All mechanical systems green. No energy signatures to give away our position. The Vorthak fleet began to move forward. Their ships flowed through space like liquid light, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. As they approached, the Allied fleet prepared for battle in the traditional way. Energy weapons charged with power that could destroy planets. Particle cannons that could slice through stars began to glow. Reality manipulation devices prepared to bend the laws of physics. The alien alliance was bringing everything they had to this final battle. Corporal Jung Min Seo was in position at one of the kinetic weapon stations. She had trained for only 2 days on the simple system, but the weapons were so basic that complex training was not needed. Point at target. Calculate simple trajectory. Pull trigger. Even a child could understand it. The battle began exactly as every previous battle had gone. The Allied fleet fired first, sending streams of energy weapons toward the Vorthak ships. Plasma bolts that could melt asteroids, quantum disruptors that could tear apart space itself, and time distortion fields that could age targets to dust. The Vorthak response was immediate and perfect. Their ships became immaterial, allowing the energy weapons to pass harmlessly through them. Those that remained solid absorbed the plasma and converted it to power for their own weapons. The quantum disruptors were deflected by dimensional shields that existed in multiple realities at once. Within minutes, the Vorthak began their counterattack. Weapons that could unmake the bonds between atoms fired at the Allied ships. Reality warping. Devices turned solid vessels into gas. Energy beams that existed in 11 dimensions struck targets that could not even see them coming. Ships began to explode throughout the Allied fleet. Captain Seo Ha-Nul, commanding an alien cruiser, watched as vessels around her simply ceased to exist. "This is going exactly like every other battle," she reported. "We cannot hurt them, but they are destroying us easily." "Wait for my signal," Hyun commanded. The kinetic weapon ships had stayed back during the initial exchange, watching and waiting. "Let them think this is just another normal battle." The Vorthak fleet pressed forward, confident in their superiority. They had seen this pattern hundreds of times before. The primitive species would attack with their energy weapons, fail completely, and then be systematically destroyed. It was almost boring in its predictability. But then, something happened that had never happened before in the entire Vorthak conquest. A simple tungsten rod, fired by Corporal Jung Min Seo, passed straight through the energy shields of a Vorthak cruiser and punched a hole clean through its crystalline hull. The Vorthak fleet stopped moving. For the first time in their expansion across the galaxy, they had been hurt by something they did not understand. "All kinetic weapons! Open fire!" Hyun commanded. Suddenly, space filled with simple metal projectiles. Tungsten rods, steel spheres, and basic missiles flew toward the Vorthak fleet. There was nothing exotic about these weapons. No energy signatures, no complex technology, no advanced materials, just dense metal moving very fast. The Vorthak tried to respond, as they always did. They turned their ships immaterial to avoid the incoming projectiles. But when they did this, their own weapons stopped working. They could not attack while in an immaterial state. Those ships that remained solid tried to deflect the projectiles with their energy shields, but the shields were designed to stop energy weapons and exotic matter, simple kinetic projectiles. passed right through them as if the shields were not there at all. "Direct hit on enemy vessel," reported gunner Shin Hyo-jin. "Their hull is cracking. I repeat, we are causing visible damage to Vorthak ships." More tungsten rods found their targets. The Vorthak ships, despite their advanced technology, were surprisingly fragile when hit by simple kinetic weapons. Their crystalline hulls, designed to absorb energy and deflect exotic attacks, shattered like glass when struck by fast-moving metal. Pilot Moon Tae-yang led his squadron of fighters in, close to the enemy fleet. Without energy weapons to give away their position, the small craft were nearly invisible to Vorthak sensors. Beginning attack run. Manual targeting engaged. The fighters dove toward the enemy vessels, firing tungsten rods from close range. The Vorthak ships tried to track the small craft, but their targeting systems were designed to lock onto energy signatures and complex technology. The primitive human fighters did not register as threats until they were already attacking. "Enemy fleet is showing confusion," observed communications specialist Kang Sora. "Their formation is breaking apart. They are not responding in their usual coordinated manner." The reason became clear as the battle continued. The Vorthak mines, which could analyze and counter any advanced weapon within seconds, could not understand what was happening to them. Their sensors detected no exotic energy patterns, no complex technologies, no advanced materials. From their perspective, they were being attacked by nothing at all. Engineer Lee Sang-woo monitored the battle from his basic systems. "Captain, the Vorthak are trying to scan our projectiles, but their sensors cannot classify them as weapons. The tungsten rods are too simple for their analysis programs to understand." Captain Bae Soo-jin coordinated the kinetic weapon ships as they pressed their attack. "All vessels, continue firing. Aim for the largest ships first. Remember, these are manual weapons. Trust your instincts, not computers." The battle turned into something that had never been seen in galactic warfare, advanced alien vessels fighting, alongside primitive human craft, all using weapons that belonged in a museum. Energy beings that could manipulate reality, being defeated by chunks of metal moving in straight lines. A massive Vorthak battleship tried to ram the Soul's Pride, probably hoping to destroy the source of these incomprehensible attacks. But Hyun had expected this. "Evasive maneuvers. Fire all kinetic weapons at close range." Dr. Park Soo coordinated the attack. "Firing tungsten rods at point-blank range. Target is too close to miss." Dozens of metal projectiles struck the Vorthak battleship simultaneously. The crystalline hull, which had survived attacks from planet-killing weapons, could not withstand the simple kinetic impacts. Cracks spread across its surface like a broken window, and then the entire ship began to break apart. "Impossible," came a transmission from the Vorthak fleet. It was the first time anyone had ever heard them speak during battle. "These weapons should not function. They violate no physical laws, yet they cause damage patterns we cannot predict." More Vorthak ships began to retreat, trying to put distance between themselves and the kinetic weapons. But the simple projectiles, following basic ballistic trajectories, continued to find their targets. Every hit caused damage that the Vorthak could not understand or repair. "Enemy fleet is withdrawing," reported Captain Seo Hanul. "I repeat, the Vorthak are retreating. This is the first time anyone has ever seen them retreat from battle." The Allied fleet pursued, continuing to fire their primitive weapons. Ship after ship in the Vorthak fleet suffered damage from tungsten rods and steel projectiles. Their advanced minds, so superior at analyzing complex technology, simply could not adapt to weapons that had no technology to analyze. 1 month after the Battle of Kepler Nebula, Captain Lee Hyun stood once again in the Galactic Council chamber. But this time, everything was different. The massive room that had once felt overwhelming now seemed welcoming. The alien faces that had looked skeptical before now showed respect and curiosity. The atmosphere of desperation had been replaced by something the galaxy had not felt in a long time: hope. The Vorthak Empire had not been completely defeated, but their expansion had stopped. More importantly, they had begun to retreat from conquered systems. For the first time in their galactic conquest, they were acting defensively instead of aggressively. The simple kinetic weapons had done more than win a single battle. They had changed the entire nature of the war. Dr. Park Soo sat beside Hyun. But now she wore the uniform of Director of Primitive Warfare Research. The position had been created, specifically for her after the success of the kinetic weapons strategy. Alien scientists from across the galaxy wanted to learn from her about the principles of simple warfare. Admiral Park Chan-ho, who had been promoted after the battle, addressed the Council. The results have exceeded all expectations. Vorthak forces have withdrawn from 47 star systems. Their fleet movements have become defensive rather than offensive. Most significantly, we have received communication attempts from Vorthak, vessels requesting negotiations. The word negotiations caused excited murmurs throughout the chamber. The Vorthak had never attempted to communicate with their enemies before. They had simply conquered, absorbed, and moved on. The fact that they wanted to talk suggested that the kinetic weapon strategy had fundamentally changed their thinking. Kolthara, the Zenthari Council leader, spread its wings in a gesture of satisfaction. The human strategy has given us something we have not had in over a year. Time. Time to rebuild, time to plan, and time to hope. General Moxtar, who had initially opposed the kinetic weapon plan, now looked embarrassed as he spoke. I owe the humans an apology. I called their plan madness, but it was the sanest thing anyone proposed. Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best solutions. Historian Dr. An Mi-young had been documenting the events for the Galactic Archives. She stood to address the Council. The Battle of Kepler Nebula will be remembered as the turning point in this war. But more than that, it will be remembered as the moment when the galaxy learned that advancement and superiority are not the same thing. The screens around the chamber showed footage from the battle. Alien viewers watched in fascination as primitive tungsten rods punched through Vorthak shields that had stopped planet-killing weapons. The images looked impossible, but they were completely real. Engineer Ko Young-ho, who had been training alien crews in kinetic warfare, gave a report on their progress. 237 alien vessels have been converted to kinetic weapon systems. The training process is much faster than anyone expected because the weapons are so simple to understand. How simple? Asked Veltara, the Zenthari scientist. Child could learn to operate them in an hour, Ko Young-ho replied. Point at target, calculate basic trajectory, fire projectile. No complex systems, no exotic physics, no advanced mathematics. Just aim and shoot. Ambassador Kim Da-yoon, who had initially been embarrassed by the human presence at the council, now looked proud as she spoke. Earth has received requests for military advisors from over 50 species. They want humans to teach them how to fight like primitives. The irony was not lost on anyone. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy were asking the youngest, spacefaring species to teach them how to use ancient weapons. Universities that had studied exotic physics for millions of years were now offering courses in basic ballistics. Lieutenant Oh Dong-hyun, who had led the first kinetic weapon squadron, described the psychological impact on Vorthak forces. Captured communications show that Vorthak minds are struggling to understand what happened at Kepler Nebula. Their language has no words for simple kinetic impact. They describe our attacks as incomprehensible matter displacement events. They cannot understand being hit by rocks because their minds are too advanced to recognize rocks as weapons, Dr. Park Soo added. It is like a supercomputer trying to solve the problem of 1 + 1. The answer is too simple for their processing systems to handle. Captain Bae Soo-jin reported on the broader strategic situation. Vorthak expansion has not just stopped. It has reversed. They are pulling back from frontier systems and consolidating around their core territories. Intelligence suggests they are trying to develop countermeasures for kinetic weapons, but so far they have not succeeded. The reason for their failure was becoming clear to everyone. How do you develop a countermeasure for basic physics? The Vorthak could make their ships immaterial, but then they could not fight. They could strengthen their hulls, but dense metal moving fast enough would penetrate any material. They could try to dodge, but simple projectiles were very difficult to avoid at close range. Communications specialist Kang So-ra had been monitoring Vorthak transmissions throughout the galaxy. Their communications have changed dramatically since the battle. Before, their messages were efficient and mathematical. Now they show signs of confusion, frustration, and something that might be fear. Fear? General Moxtar asked. The Vorthak can feel fear? Apparently, Kang So-ra replied. Being defeated by weapons they cannot understand has had a psychological impact. They have always won by being more advanced than their enemies. Now they are losing to enemies who are less advanced, and their minds cannot process this reversal. Kolthara called for attention. We have received a formal communication from the Vorthak Empire. They wish to establish a ceasefire and begin negotiations for territorial boundaries. The chamber erupted in excited noise. A ceasefire meant that the galaxy-wide destruction would stop. Negotiations meant that billions of lives could be saved. It was more progress than anyone had dared to hope for just months before. What are their terms? Admiral Park Chan-ho asked. They want to keep their current territories but agree to stop expanding, Kolthara replied. In exchange, they request that kinetic weapons not be used against their civilian populations. The request was revealing. The Vorthak were not afraid of the kinetic weapons themselves. They were afraid of not understanding them. Their entire culture was built on technological superiority and perfect knowledge. Being defeated by something they could not comprehend was more terrifying to them than death. Dr. Yoon Hai-ri, the xenopsychologist, provided her analysis. The Vorthak mind requires order and understanding. Kinetic weapons represent chaos to them, effects without comprehensible causes. They would rather negotiate than continue facing an enemy they cannot analyze. Hyun stood to address the council. The ceasefire is a good first step, but we must remember that the Vorthak still control most of the galaxy. We cannot become overconfident just because we found one weapon that works against them. What do you recommend? Kolthara asked. We continue developing simple weapons and tactics, Hyun replied. Not just kinetic projectiles, but other forms of primitive warfare. We teach the galaxy to think like our ancestors, to solve problems with basic tools and straightforward strategies. Engineer Nam Bo-young, who had been working on new primitive weapon designs, presented her latest creations. We have developed kinetic mines, simple explosive devices triggered by physical contact. We have also created net launchers that use gravity and momentum to entangle enemy ships. All of these weapons follow the same principle, Dr. Park Soo explained. They use basic physics instead of advanced technology. They cannot be analyzed because there is nothing complex to analyze. Tactical Officer Yoon Jae had been studying historical human warfare. Earth's military history shows that simple tactics often defeat complex strategies. Guerrilla warfare, surprise attacks, and basic traps have won battles against superior G forces throughout human history. The galaxy has forgotten these lessons, Professor Choi Min-ho said through quantum communication from Earth. Every species has focused on becoming more advanced, more complex, more sophisticated. But sometimes the best answer is the simplest one. As the council session continued, reports came in from across the galaxy. Vorthak forces were continuing their withdrawal. Refugee populations were beginning to return to liberated systems. The network of terror that had gripped the galaxy for over a year was finally breaking apart. But perhaps most importantly, the allied species were beginning to work together in new ways. The crisis had forced them to abandon their pride and prejudices. Advanced civilizations were learning from primitive techniques. Young species were teaching ancient wisdom to their elders. Captain Seo-ha Newell summarized the situation perfectly. We have learned that being advanced does not mean being superior. Sometimes the most powerful tool is the one that does not try to be powerful at all. As the session ended, Hyun reflected on how much had changed. When he had first entered this chamber, he had felt like a primitive among gods. Now he understood that being primitive was not a weakness. It was a different kind of strength. The galaxy had been saved not by superior technology or brilliant strategy, but by the willingness to think simply when everyone else was thinking complexly.